you're saying is like if a foreign, like a U.S. banker goes to Hong Kong and works in Hong Kong and publicly expresses a view that, for example, the Hong Kong dollar should be devalued compared to the U.S. dollar, that could be interpreted as illegal to say that?
That and many other things. What about short sellers? What about someone writing an article commenting about Chinese economy? What about someone writing an article about Hong Kongers relocating overseas or transferring their assets overseas?
Or even you saying that there's an economic downturn in mainland China. Chinese state-run media says there is no economic downturn.
Exactly. Especially you are saying things that's a message contradicting what the Hong Kong government or what the mainland China government is saying, then it could be a big problem under the new draft law.
Well, the strange thing about Article 23, I think, is that they tried to pass that back in 2003, and over 100,000 people protested that, if not more.
Of course, that was not ideal that you introduce a new law. I'm talking about 2003, where you introduce a new law under Article 23, and then the public were so unhappy that they were in the streets in large numbers. And then as a result, you pull it, you also see the chief executive, I think, finishing only one term rather than going for the second term, in part for this reason. That was not ideal, but that was a process which kind of worked. The people voiced their concerns, and the government refrained from doing something. The same thing kind of repeated in 2019 when the extradition law was passed. I'm not sure how many people, whether you guys or the listeners remember that the very first protest in 2019 was not a mass protest on the streets of normal people, regular Hong Kong citizens. It was on June 6, 2019. It was a lawyers' silent march of around 2,000 to 3,000 lawyers. It was a kind of hot and humid day. We are looking at it's early June already. We are looking at all these lawyers staging the largest lawyers' march in Hong Kong in history, and they were just walking slowly from the from the Court of Final Appeal, the big classic building in Central, walked slowly towards the seaside and then towards the government building in Admiralty, and the request was very specific to delay and very technical. The request was for the Hong Kong government to delay the second reading of the extradition bill, because once that reading is passed, the Hong Kong government was clearly going to push even faster for that law to become to be enacted. That march was a silent march. There was no slogan, no shouting, no words, and these people walked to the government center, submitted their petition, and went home, and that's it. If they listened, if they did something, a lot of things, disastrous things that we're talking about, the street violence and so forth, the big protests, the police violence and so forth, wouldn't happen.
Well, so since there was such a big protest against Article 23 back in 2003, why is it being pushed ahead now? Has it changed in any way, or is it still just as bad as it was back then?
We really don't know. People say it's probably a result of some sort of a culture of a performative politics, meaning rather than doing things to address the concerns of or desires of your constituents, the politicians need to do things for some people, maybe their bosses in Beijing or the liaison office to see. It's from the legal point of view, it's really hard to think, looking at this draft, there's anything punishable that's not already covered by the 2020 national security law. We don't know. But looking at the everyday politics and policy making and legislation in Hong Kong these days, it's also not a big surprise either.
Is it possible that they could, because Article 23 would be passed, what you call the Security Law 2.0, this would be passed by Hong Kong's own legislative body and technically be enforced by the Hong Kong government rather than being imposed by the Chinese government upon Hong Kong, that the Chinese government could then turn around and say, see, this is a legitimate, you can't criticize us. This is something Hong Kong's own government wanted.
Well, they already say you can't criticize.
Well, yes, but it could be a way of trying to legitimize the things that they're already doing. But instead of being like, okay, well, we're not doing this. This is Hong Kong doing it now.
Right, but I'm not sure that we can say that the new law gives the Hong Kong government more power to enforce it. Well, I'm not a Hong Kong public law lawyer. I'm more of a international business lawyer. But just from some of the basic stuff that I know, I'm quite sure that over the past several years, since the National Security Law 2020 has been passed, there have been very well funded government enforcement in Hong Kong of that law, and there are people currently in court in Hong Kong being charged for that law. Some people have been convicted already. So the enforcement has been in full force for that one, and we have no reason to doubt that it won't be the same for the next one. And just looking at the draft, the next one, like I mentioned, has probably more to do with the business people, with the economic sector, with especially foreign companies and individuals doing business in Hong Kong. And looking at, regardless what the law says, because the law is so vague and the definitions are so broad, the way that they probably will interpret some of the provisions in the draft are also very concerning, because every day the government talks about seditious intent. Well, anything that you say that they don't like, it could be interpreted as something done by you with seditious intent, or soft resistance. The government talk about how some people, even though they're not on the street, even though they're not doing anything violent, they are not cooperating, they're not patriotic, they are using soft resistance against the government. What is soft resistance? We really don't know. And what's national security? What's national security or national secret? Well, arguably anything that the government touches is national security or national secret. And the past several years, well, especially in mainland China, bigger part of the economy has been taken over by state-owned companies. And all those companies, their information, their conducts, their data have something to do with the state.